Oh, hey everyone. You're probably wondering why I'm starting out this video with me urinating. I'm going to explain that to you in a second. This video is going to be the second video in our series about creating a drought-resilient garden. And we're going to be talking about the very important concept of water consumption versus water use. Let's get to it. So before we get started on anything else, I wanted to show you these two graphs, just to give you a little bit more of an idea about who and what is using water in the state and what are the main areas where we can conserve water and put water back into our water ecosystem. So here, let's start off with this graph on the left. This is a graph of how humans use water in the state of California. And what you see here is that there is one user of water which completely dwarfs everything else that we do with water, and that is agriculture. Agriculture uses 77% of the water that we have available to us, and that is way more than anyone else. And if you've driven down the 5 freeway between the Bay Area and LA, you've seen the type of farming that we're talking about here. The industrial chemical farming, which destroys soil health, which is all done in monoculture, and which uses tons of chemicals and overhead irrigation to grow our food, and to grow food for people worldwide, actually. That type of farming is extremely inefficient with water use. If you saw our last video about the drought-resilient garden, then you saw that soil is the most important thing in using water wisely. And if you've seen these farms along the 5 freeway, you know that those soils are completely and utterly degraded. So we have to remember that agriculture is the biggest user of water in the state, and our urban residential uses are much smaller. Only 10% of the state's use of water goes to homes. Now let's look at our residential urban use. Okay? Where are we using water at home? And you can see here again, there's one major user which is dwarfing all other uses, and that is outdoor water use. And when we talk about outdoor water use, we're mostly talking about our lawns. So watering our lawns uses almost more than double the amount of water for all the water that we use indoors. Think about that for a second. All the water that you use for showering, all the water you use for cooking, washing your dishes, washing your hands, washing your clothes, all of that water, we're using more than twice that outside. And when you actually think about it, that's a pretty good figure, because every single one of the sprinklers that we use to water our lawns is like turning a shower head on. Every sprinkler uses about the same amount of water as a shower head. So if you have 30 sprinklers and you run them for 10 minutes, that's like taking 30 10-minute showers. Okay, so looking at these graphs, we can get a good idea about where it is that we can impact our water use and we can reduce our water footprint. And so when I look at these graphs, here's what I see. I see that the major user of water in the state is agriculture, and the major user of water at home is our grass. So if we can convert our grass into organic gardens, where we build soil, where we create healthy food, where we harvest rainwater, then we can take a chunk out of this piece, and we can take a chunk out of this piece and have a really significant impact on water use in the state. So if we're going to solve the drought problem, we first have to understand what the problem is. And of course, part of it is on the consumption side, just like what I showed you in the previous graphs. But the other problem is that the fact that we even consume water at all. And I'm going to explain exactly what I mean. But first, we need to understand how the water cycle works, okay? The water cycle in nature is very different from the water cycle in our urban and suburban areas. In nature, what happens is that we actually have a water cycle, a large water cycle that's full of smaller subcycles. So if you think about the ocean, okay? The ocean evaporates tons of water up into the sky. Okay, that water comes out. When it hits the air, in the cold air in the sky, it condenses in the clouds. That condensed water then falls down onto the ground as rain and as snow. The rain and snow then comes down the mountains and is picked up by all the different life forms that live in the natural systems below. The trees pick up the moisture, the grasses pick up the moisture, the animals drink the water, the soil, the healthy soil, captures and stores that water. And that begins all these smaller cycles. So let's take an example of a tree. Okay, so the tree soaks up some of the rainwater, and with that rainwater, it produces fruit. That fruit has moisture in it. That fruit is eaten by an animal and then is urinated out onto a grass, which is then eaten by another animal, who then urinates that water out, which is soaked up by a soil, which feeds another tree, which evaporates, transpirates water back into the air, forms more clouds, the water comes back down, comes into a lake, is drank up by more animals, which urinates on another plant, and then another thing, another animal takes that, and a plant takes that, and there's all these micro cycles of water as it comes down from the mountains before it reaches the ocean. Okay? That is the natural water cycle. Now let's look at the man-made water cycle. You're at home, you take a shower. Where does that water come from? Well, here in LA, it can come from three major sources. One, the California State Water Project. Two, the LA Aqueduct, which brings water from the Owens Valley. And three, the Colorado River. So that water comes directly from a large water source and is basically piped directly to you. There's no one using that water between when it comes down the mountain and you use it. And so you bypass all the other life forms that could have used that water. The water is only consumed once by you. And then after you consume it, or while you're consuming it, you maybe put some chemicals into that water. If you're showering with a chemical-based soap and shampoo, you've now polluted that water, and so that water is actually not even usable by other life forms. So that water then has to go to a sewage treatment plant where energy and resources are used to clean it up, and then that water is usually ejected out to the ocean or pumped back into the ground. So what we see here in the urban environment is a short-circuiting of the natural cycle of water. Water here is not used, it's polluted and consumed. Whereas in a natural system, water is recycled, 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 and that water moves slowly through the ecosystem. Here, the water moves very quickly. It comes down the mountains, is used once, and is just thrown away. And so this is where you see the major reason behind the drought, because we are not using water, we are consuming water, we're polluting water. And so that is a key difference. I'm going to talk about some of the systems now that we have in this house, the growing home, which has turned us from water consumers into water users. This tree here right now is helping my family use water. When it rains in the garden here, the tree picks up the moisture from the soil and then turns it into beautiful, tasty fruit, which is full of water. And we eat that fruit, take that moisture in, and then we return it to the garden. And that's why I started this video with me peeing in the garden, because we are not consumers of water here, we are users of water here. We put the moisture, we keep the moisture in the garden, and we recycle it as much as we can. Part of the reason this tree is able to use water so well is, of course, because the soil is healthy. So let's take a look at the healthy soil under this tree. So you can see here, we're under this persimmon tree, and you don't see any soil. That's the first thing you should notice. The soil is completely mulched, and that mulch is keeping the moisture in the soil. It's preventing evaporation, and that keeps the soil healthy. And when the soil is healthy, it is loose, it is rich, and it holds on to moisture better. It helps the tree use the water more efficiently and produce tons of healthy fruit for us. So again, you'll notice in so many of our videos we're talking about the soil, because the soil is where this all starts. You can see all around me here, even in the open spaces in our garden, the gathering spaces, the dining spaces, the walkways, we haven't used any type of concrete or bricks or pavers, because those types of materials absorb heat and cause evaporation. And when we evaporate water out, we're losing water from our water cycle. We're not allowing that water to be used by our plants. And so in all of our open spaces, our unplanted spaces, we use a wood chip mulch. And this wood chip mulch acts as an insulating blanket over our soil. It prevents the soil from warming up too much or cooling down too much, and it keeps the moisture available to our plants. It keeps the moisture in our water cycle. So mulch is a very important thing to have in your garden, and wood chips are the easiest materials to use because they're often being thrown away in cities, and you can usually get these materials for free, huge amounts of them, and mulch your entire landscape wherever there's open space. Because our soil is healthy and we keep the ground mulched, we can also grow these living mulches, such as this clover right here next to me. And this clover, again, is shading the ground, picking up the moisture, and then making it available in its leaves. And we actually take these leaves and we feed them to our chickens, again, recycling that water in our garden. Now, I want to take a second here to talk about artificial lawn or turf. Artificial lawn is not a drought-friendly alternative to grass. Artificial lawn is a huge creator of evaporation. That's plastic. Plastic heats up super quickly, and just because you're not consuming water doesn't mean you're not using water. If you put artificial lawn down, it's going to suck up all the water from the ground and put it into the air, and it's also going to heat up your house and cause your electricity bill to go up, your cooling bills to go up. So artificial turf, not an option. Now let's look at this pond here. You can see we put in this pond and it's below the grade of the land. And this is a slope right over here, and that slope comes down this way. And what we noticed was that we were getting some flooding down here in a rain. So we dug this pond, and now this pond takes that runoff water and stores it in this little catchment area and makes that water available to the other life forms in this garden. Again, we're using the water, we're recycling it. The rainwater comes down, it normally would evaporate, now it stays here. The plants in the pond keep the water clean, they use some of that water themselves, but they make that clean water available to the animals, insects, and other life forms in our garden. And so you can see bees coming here during the day, drinking water. You can see our cat coming here during the day, drinking water. And then our cat will go and urinate on some of our plants. So that water is being recycled, 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 recycled. It's staying in our water system. Now, of course, when we're talking about reusing water and keeping water in our water system, we've got to talk about gray water. So we're here in our outdoor shower again, and our outdoor shower is one of the 3 gray water systems that we have at the growing home. A gray water system takes water that you use for an indoor purpose and puts that water outdoors. So when we use our shower here outside, the water doesn't go down the sewage pipe. The water goes out to the garden. And the one practice that we have to change for this system to work is that we have to change the type of soap we're using. And so now we use a biodegradable, organic, natural soap, which is actually nutrients for the plants that are growing in the garden. And when we shower, we're not just watering our plants, we are also fertilizing them. So systems like these, gray water systems, are very effective ways of keeping water in our ecosystem. Now, of course, you don't have to build an outdoor shower. You can actually have the water from your indoor shower piped outside. You can have the water from your laundry machine, your bathroom sinks, your bathroom showers. All of that water is legal to be used outside. Some of those systems do require a permit. But this is the type of way we need to think. We need to think about how to keep water cycling. We need to think about how we can use water and not consume water. I hope you found this video eye-opening and that you take some of this information and use it at home to start your drought-resilient garden. Remember, we're going to be making a series of videos on creating a drought-resilient garden, and those videos will be up on our website and on our YouTube channel. So please go onto our website, thegrowingclub.com, sign up for our newsletter, and also read about our membership options. And of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. We'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. And otherwise, happy gardening!